Baruch Hashem, you're a bad Jew.
Shalom.
Welcome back to another episode of Bad Jew, the place where there is no such thing as a bad Jew. With me today is Moriel Shviki. Moriel, how are you today?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a treat to have you. You know, you've done a lot of really great content with Guidance to the Runway and also with your personal account, Moriel Shviki, on TikTok. And I've always really appreciated the kind of, like you put yourself out there talking about modesty. We're going to be talking about modesty in today's episode. I'm really excited a lot about your personal experience, also a little bit of the origin of where this comes from. But before we get into that, we have your right of entry into the podcast, which is the 4-minute Bad Jew Challenge, where you tell your life story in 4 minutes. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Excellent. Yalla.
Okay, so my name is Moriel Shviki. As you guys know, I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California, and I didn't grow up religious. I grew up traditional and just like super Masorti. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with that term, but it's more of like, I'm Israeli, my parents are Israeli, so we grew up with traditions and doing Shabbat dinners, but not really internalizing it. So for me, that's what sets me apart and what I really felt like an outcast. I'll explain later. But yeah, so I didn't grow up religious and I grew up going to public school for most of my life. I did attend a reform preschool, but it wasn't anything of how I imagined. Like now thinking about it, like looking back, I'm like, that is not what I would expect it to have gone to. I'm like, yeah, I wish I hadn't gone to that, but it's better than nothing. And I feel like I got experiences and it just helped me like shape who I am today. So at the age of 11, we made a giant shift and moved to South America, Chile. And I did grow up speaking Spanish, so it wasn't that difficult for me to adjust to the language, so to speak, but more to the culture. And that was a really, really difficult adjustment, not just for me, for my whole family. And just a lot of changes went into that. And it was really not easy. But knowing the language definitely made it easier. And it was really interesting because the class of girls was only 7 girls, including me. And that was probably the smallest class I've ever attended. And another major point is like, this is the first really from religious school I've ever attended in my life. So that was a big change. And also just adjusting to the types of girls there and just the religious community itself. I was not used to that at all. Although like my parents like grew up like having like religious friends, like we had family friends that are religious, but we never really were exposed to it in a way where like we wanted to change and be like that. So that was kind of where I was at that point. And at this point, I was not keeping anything. I was not keeping Shabbat. I was not Shomer Shabbat, not Shomer kosher, just really doing my own thing. And I was learning from everyone around me. And in that school in Chile, that was the first time I really learned to speak Hebrew and like really well and like write and read in Hebrew and how to pray. And that was something that was so eye-opening because I was like, I get to connect to God in any way that I want. And that's what really matters to me as a Jew. And yeah, so I feel like that was a big experience. What else? Let's see. After South America, we moved back. We were there for 2 years and I actually did not have a bat mitzvah. I decided not to have one. And looking back, that was kind of a regret. But yeah, so we moved back to LA after that. And then I attended a religious school going forward. So yeah, and then I went to MEC and Valley Torah High School in Los Angeles. So yeah.
Awesome. Moriel, you nailed it with 50 seconds left on the clock. And that was awesome. Thank you for that really in-depth look at your life. But also, I got to say, I think the one thing I really admire about your approach to all this is that you even said it yourself, you can learn from anyone, try to learn from everyone that you can. Going all the way to Chile is a pretty unique experience.
Yeah.
Who's can put on their Jewish education resume, so to speak. So I think that's pretty amazing, Moriel, and kol hakavod to you and your Jewish pursuit. That's also why you're on this podcast, because your life has been in this pursuit. One of the conclusions you've drawn is how you do modesty, specifically with how you dress. And you talk about that a lot on your Instagram and TikTok. Now, I think we've vaguely talked about modesty on this podcast before, both from, but never, we've never like hyper focused on it. So I want to focus on that today. Many in the secular world would accuse modesty as being something that's secular, being something that's very quote unquote heteronormative. So why does modesty appear to be heteronormative, and why does it appear to be oppressive? And how do you make it work for you?
So, from my perspective, I feel that since I didn't grow up religious, I didn't grow up with the perspective of I have to do this because a rabbi said so. I have to do this because my parents want me to cover my knees. You know what I mean? So, since I didn't grow up like that, I formulated my own approach to modesty in a loving manner, not out of fear, out of love. And this approach came from seeing everything on social media. I actually took a break from social media before I started doing content creation. Beforehand, I didn't dress modestly before. I just started like a few years, maybe less than 2 years ago. And before, when I had social media, it was a very toxic way of interacting with social media. Now it's not that way because I have a different approach to it, and I have a goal, I have a mission of why I'm doing this. So beforehand, I would compare myself to every single girl. Everyone does that nowadays. We still do that, but in a way where it's like, oh, I wish I showed that much skin, or I wish that I was this exposing to the world. But really, that's not what modesty is. Modesty is internalizing your connection with Hashem or God and making it yours. And, not really physically dressing the part, but really acting modestly, being private with your life. That's true modesty. And for me, it really helped dressing and then internalizing, because for me, I have to kind of fake it till I make it. And, it really helps to do that because you kind of wake up in the morning, you're like, okay, I'm setting out to do my mission. I'm setting out to be a Kiddush Hashem, to do Hashem's will in this world. And I really feel like that was kind of set for me. Even though I really struggled with modesty, I kind of took a shift in my life, and seeing all these girls who don't dress modestly kind of like made me realize, like, it's okay to not, you don't need to show your skin in order to be like, in order to have a connection with God. Like, you don't need to show so much skin in social media to get validation, And I don't think that that's a good way to portray yourself on social media. And I think there's a way to dress. I love being classy. I love, you don't have to be too much. Like, there's ways to do it. You don't need to like cover yourself up in order, you know what I mean? And I don't think that covering up means you're being oppressive or like ugly in a way. I get DMs every single day of women on my Instagram saying, how do you do it? How do you, like, this is just too much for me. And like, I know it is a lot, but it's to a point where Hashem doesn't expect you to do everything. You have to do everything that you can at the moment in your life. And I really learned that the hard way. And like, every single day you take on a little bit more. If you wear shorter skirts, wear something a bit longer, whatever makes you feel comfortable. And for me, it's been like, it's easy for me to dress the part, but I want to really internalize it. That's my goal with my page. And like teaching girls that you don't have to show your body. That's not, you internalize it the way that you want and connect to it the way you want. So
Okay.
yeah, and
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to chew on there. I would say that. So first of all, I mean, you're not the first guest to bring up the concept of faking it till you make it. I think that's actually a very healthy approach. If you
yeah,
really want to experience it, give it a try. Understand that it's not going to be fluid the first time you give it a shot, and just fake it, right? That's certainly how it's been for me. For example, my parallels that I pray in the morning, I'm still faking it till I make it right now. I've only now brought in my morning blessings into my morning ritual.
wow,
I'm out to
that's
film, and
amazing.
then, like I'm trying things. I'm very much in that fake it till you make it stage as well. Of course, the standard being a particular standard. But anyway, there was something that was interesting that you pointed out, which is that there is this comparison factor that which everyone compares themselves. You're absolutely right. Even the holiest of holy people out there will compare themselves
Yeah,
all the time. And of course, the healthy thing is the only thing you should ever compare yourself to is who you were. But we don't do that as humans. That's not our nature. The Yetzer Hara, it's the evil eye, right?
yeah, hmm
We compare ourselves, and what that leads to is we wonder how come everyone is doing this thing called Judaism better than we are. We also wonder how people can be sexier physically than we are,
right,
right? I feel like in a certain way, and I'm not speaking about this from a femininity standpoint, but the pursuit of sexiness, the pursuit of just like being confident in how you appeal to others, right? Is just something that is embedded in human nature. I want to be attractive even right now, but I don't think I'm dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, but the t-shirt's very form-fitting. I'm showing a lot of arm. Uh, so crass, but you know what I mean? Like, it's not the most modest because it's
Right.
not, it's a pretty form-fitting shirt. If I were to intentionally wear something baggy, suddenly that would become more modest. When you're in that position, how do you actually find that self-appreciation for yourself without the validation of others?
That's a really difficult question, but I like that question because I struggle with it so much. I've been going to therapy actually for 2 years, something personal, and it's not been easy. And I struggle with my confidence every single day, especially being on social media. And I feel that, you know, in the end of the day, it's what you think of yourself, and you don't need the validation from other people. And it's hard not to get the validation because everyone craves validation. Even I do. Like whenever I post something, I'm like waiting for the comments to roll in, or like to make sure, like, did I do okay? Like, am I putting myself out there in the way that I want others to see me in a good light. And it's really not easy. And yeah, sorry, what was the second part of the question?
No, I
What
mean,
did you ask?
just more so about the I guess the personal choice. How do you get that validation, and also just
For
understanding,
yourself. Yeah.
yeah, for yourself. Like, how do you
I
even
think
draw
it's
that?
self-work. I think it's really self-work because even me, like I trying to like be more grateful in my life been helpful to really be confident in myself because I'm confident in what I have and what Hashem has given me. And it's a very difficult, and I don't blame anyone who is going through this because it's struggle for every single Jewish person, every single person. And yeah, it's really not, it's not easy. So yeah, I would
Mm.
just say like keep working on yourself. And if you see a flaw in yourself, that it's a behavior or something, change it and work on it. Don't just be like, oh, I can't change it. I'm done. I'm screwed. And that happens to me too. I'm like, oh, Moriel, like, why are you doing it? Why'd you do that? Like, that was so embarrassing. Or like, you look back at moments and you're like, no, that was not okay. And like, I hurt this person, or I did this thing I regret. And at the end of the day, you sit down with yourself, write down what you did, and just look at the behaviors that caused that and work on yourself. That's all you have to do, and it's not easy. It can take years of work to get to know yourself, years of work to be confident. But if you start today, that's all that Hashem cares about, and that's all that you should care about, because even a little bit of growth is better than who you were yesterday. So
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Now, taking a 10,000-foot view, I want to focus more on the concept of modesty, because I appreciate you being vulnerable. And thank you again for
yeah,
sharing about your experiences in therapy and your pursuit of your own personal mental health. That's so important. It's something to very much vouch for and advocate for. So thank you for that. Really do appreciate that. And everyone should go see a therapist. Everyone should have some kind of guidance in their life from a
right.
mental health point. A rabbi can count, by the way.
The,
Or
the
if
thing is, a lot of people don't want to work on themselves, so it's hard to put yourself out there. And that if you even think about wanting to work on yourself, that's already a step. That's how I see it.
the best done for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the 10,000-foot view, origins of modesty. From your time in school, what has been your experience? What have you learned about the concept of modesty, and what draws you to it?
What draws me to what was the last thing?
What draws you to modesty from the Torah perspective?
Okay, so in my school in South America, I didn't learn about modesty so much. But when I came to my school, when I moved back to LA and I was here for 7th and 8th grade in EMEC, we had this one class. It was called Ishkafa with one of the teachers, and in 8th grade. And I actually had a little journal that I kept of my growth in certain areas. And I was not keeping Shabbos at this point. Literally, I wasn't doing so much, but the fact that I was even trying to internalize that, I feel like it was still a starting point. So we learned about like inner tzniut. That was the main thing. And the teacher didn't really talk about it in an oppressive way, which is that was the first step in me starting to love modesty, because the way it was taught and brought down to me wasn't in a way that I felt like I want to get out of this. I hate this. This is not for me. It was more of in a loving way. And she explained how Hashem loves you how you are. You are a Tzelem Elohim. You're a soul. You have a piece of Hashem inside of you, and that already makes you like so holy. So that's the first thing she said. And for me, I was like, what does this have to do with modesty? So really, modesty is, internalizing and having your own connection to Hashem, like I said before, but not listening to what others say around you. because not everyone is at the same place as you. So you got to do what you got to do. And that's what Hashem cares about. She taught it in a way where it was like I said, very loving. And she explained how as we go through our life, many people will try and pressure us to dress in certain ways. And she even said, like, yes, you should cover your knees. Yes, you should cover your elbows, your collarbone, all the tzniut guidelines that rabbis have put on us. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm not trying to bash rabbis in any way, like at all. I think that's halacha, and we should one day follow halacha, and it's in our own way. But it's not easy because those are restrictions. And she explained that this was an interesting way to explain it, but she said how every time you cover a bit more, it's kind of like counts as a boundary. That's kind of like boundaries in life. And I saw it in a different way. I'm like, that's really interesting. I never thought about it like that. Because the Torah, like rabbis say, like, oh, you have to cover your elbows, whatever. And I'm like, that's so interesting. Why are these so like bad? Like, why can't I show my elbow? Like, why is that like just a body part? Like, what? So she was just saying that it's a boundary for yourself, and to internalize that you're a daughter of a king, you're a daughter of Hashem, and you need to dress in that way. And that's how I saw it. And I was like, wow, that's such a beautiful concept. And I would love to make Modesty mine and to make it my own. And I know many content creators who are so amazing, and they don't necessarily dress so modest, but I don't judge them for that because everyone's on their own journey, and you do what you got to do, and that's it. And at the end of the day, like I said before, it's really, really comes from within, and appreciating what you have, and just connecting to that concept. So yeah.
Okay, so that's actually a new concept that I've never heard before, and it makes me. It actually aligns with what I know about the mitzvahs behind the Torah and why they are there and they exist in the first place. The mitzvahs are there to be symbolic practices of higher intention in everything that you do. Like I apparently learned there's a proper way to tie your shoes, which I don't even.
Yes.
Maybe
It
one
was
day
so
do an episode
interesting.
about that, or maybe I'll one day do a piece of TikTok content about that. But until then, like there are so many different ways to do everything. There's a prayer for just drinking water. There's everything. There's a foot that you're supposed to touch the ground when you rise up in the morning first,
Oh
right?
my gosh.
It's like there's so many different intentions and ways to elevate your day, and that's what Judaism is about. Is about elevating everything you do, right? From taking your first breath in the morning to lying down at night, full 9 yards. Okay, so I understand that concept, and that actually makes sense. We're nowhere close to the holiday currently, but if you look at the holiday of Passover, for everything that you eat on your Seder plate has an order.
Right. Symbol.
And the order of things is to tell a story. It's to illustrate a concept, to put a point out. So your clothing, what you're saying is your clothing also needs to have that kind of level of storytelling to demonstrate who you are as an individual.
Yes.
To carry yourself.
Yeah.
That's
Because that's exactly what it is. And I think that the way you dress shows who you are, and how you respect your body, and yourself. And I've had a lot of people push back on this point, and I get it. It's just my opinion. I feel that the way you dress really shows if you respect your body or not, because some people feel the need to show their body off, and I don't judge them for that. But I really do feel that there's beauty in privacy. There's beauty in not showing everything. And that's where my love for modesty really comes from, is like, it's a mystery, and not the whole world doesn't need to know what's under. Like you got to be classy, you got to be elegant. And that's how you need to dress, like the daughter of a king, So that's really my opinion on it.
dress daughter of a king. Is that a concept directly from the Torah as well?
There's a quote. Can I pull it up 1 second? I have a quote that I think it's Kol Kevuda Bat Melech Pnima, and I'll tell you the translation in a second. Sorry.
And please be sure to go to badju.co. Badju.co is where you can get your merchandise for the podcast. That will support the show. Buy your Mazel Tov t-shirts, buy your Hebrew coffee, and so much more. Okay, Moriel, after you. I've never done that on the show before. But I'm like, not this. There.
Well, it says, it's from Tehillim. It says the honor and beauty of a princess stems from her inwardness and refinement. So that's kind of that's where halacha really gets the authority to I guess put their guidelines. But I think that that's really where the modesty comes from in the Torah, and it's from Tehillim. Like it's a fact, it's a source, so we can't argue with facts. But that's really where my point comes from, and that's like one of my favorite quotes ever. Like I really think that it shows who we are as Jewish women. And I actually learned in Chumash this year a lot of concept of tzniut. And because we're in 12th grade, like my teacher taught us a lot about it. And there was this article by, I don't know if you know her, Gila Mandelson, and she wrote a book called Inside Outside. And it was literally about this concept. She like scrutinized this concept and explained it deeply. And just her main point though was modesty is privacy. That was her point. And I personally love that. So yeah,
No, thank you for sharing.
yeah.
Yeah. For the record, I just want to push back on one concept here. And that is that you mentioned that Tehillim is fact, that it's poetry. It's poetry by King
Yes.
David. So I mean, I
It's
understand that
wonderful.
it's certainly an authentic piece of it's certainly an authentic piece of Jewish literacy that stems all the way to the Torah. I know it plays its part in relating to the Torah, but because it's poetry, I have a tough time personally grasping the idea that it's fact. No less, it's still a beautiful piece. I think it does illustrate the concept of modesty very well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I see where you're coming from, definitely. Because it's not the straight up like Torah, like the written and what Hashem said, but it's more like during the times of David HaMelech, that's how he expressed himself during times of war and how he struggled. So I feel like, yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from.
Definitely. In terms of matriarchal figures from the Torah, do you feel more connected to that origin of Jewish identity?
Yes. I think that I actually was learning about this, like I said in Chumash, that a lot of female like Jewish characters from Tanakh really like they didn't feel the need to not be private. Like there's like Sarah, for example, was the most like modest woman. And obviously like Avraham was setting out to do so many things and he had a lot of attention, but she didn't really feel the need to get all that attention. She was like in her tent with the Shabbat candles and not like dealing with the rest of the world. Because of that, Sarah had the immense like spirit. We have this, our spiritual DNA as Jewish women comes from her because being internalized, she was able to pray in any second, any place, wherever, whenever to Hashem. And that was like beautiful to learn about. And also she didn't seek attention. She didn't feel the need to go like to get the approval and validation from Bnei Israel. But Avram, I feel like he needed that in order to, be strong for the nation, and that's okay. Women are different and men and women are different, but I feel that, she's like definitely a role model when it comes to modesty. And I feel like every Jewish woman in Tanakh is, but she specifically, like what I learned about her was really nice. So yeah.
Thank you for highlighting that. I really appreciate that. Going back to you and your
Yeah.
personal, you mentioned some of the struggles that you still deal with. And it sounds like, I mean, I don't want to oust anyone in your personal life. So if this question's uncomfortable, we can erase this from the episode, okay? But in your personal life, are you around people that don't agree with your opinion? And if so, how do you handle that differentiating factor of how you dress versus how they dress, being in public with other people and so on and so forth?
That's a great question. And ready to answer it. So my parents are, like I said, they're not as religious as I am, and not in a bad way. They just are on their own journey, and they're not so strict, so to say, with certain things that I am. And that's nothing bad, no shame at all. And they support me 100%. And they're actually the most supportive parents ever. I love them so much. And they've always just encouraged me to continue on this journey of mine. And so there's not a single person in my like family that has judged me for dressing the way I am. Maybe sometimes, like I had this one aunt who, when I went to visit her in Chile, she kind of, I don't know if she meant this in a mean way or just kind of in a way where like you have more potential. But she was like, Moriel, like, what are you doing with this account? Like, Like, you don't need to, like, just show off a bit more, like, you're so beautiful, like, you could be a model or whatever, like, you could, and I'm like, I don't really wanna show so much skin," and she was kinda judging me for the fact that I was covering up so much, and it wasn't in a bad way. I don't think she meant it in a bad way, but it kinda made me feel like, like, I I'm doing this because I love it. Why can't you see it that way? And I guess that was the only pushback I've had, but my parents have been supportive and my sisters also. And yeah, it hasn't really been a struggle for me in that area. But let's say if I go out with some girls and I try to think and I see them dressing in a way where it's like, oh, I wish I could dress like that, but I kind of pledged to dress like this, and it's like I can't go against what I set out for myself. And that's kind of another thing is like when I do kind of give into the Yetzer Hara and I do maybe somehow like don't dress in a way where I'm like, I'm not proud of that, I do feel guilty. And I think there's this concept of Jewish guilt. I don't know if you've kind of been exposed to that, but I really, really do feel that in a lot of areas in my life. And I kind of think to myself, like, okay, I started this journey feeling like Hashem loves me. Obviously, he loves everyone. But, sometimes I do things out of fear. Like, oh, what if I don't wear a skirt to this event? Like, people will judge me, or like, my friends, like, who know that I have this account, like, I need to dress modestly, like, this is not okay, like, also, like, if I'm on vacation, like, I just came back from Hawaii, for example, like, I'm not posting like, every single thing, like, I'm allowed to have a private life, of course, but I'm saying, like, everyone expects me, like, "Oh, you for sure, like, wear, like, dresses to the beach or the pool." No, I don't, we're human, like, it's hard to do that, it's really difficult, and that's what I'm saying, I'm still in this journey where I'm like, okay, like maybe I won't wear that to the beach and like I don't need to post about it. Like I'm still on my own journey and I'm going to be honest about it. I'm not going to be like a fraud and say I dress modestly 100% of the time because I don't. I dress as much as I can, and that's in the end that's what matters.
I think that's beautiful. By the way, I find it funny you asked me if I've ever dealt with Jewish guilt, and here I am with the podcast called Bad Jew. But I want to say it's a big little thing. I think that navigating it is so difficult. And by the way, I mean, men have their own modesty standards as well. They're also drawn up by a lot of male figures in the Torah. You'll oftentimes see someone who's following that Torah lifestyle, also known as Yiddishkeit, dressed in a suit, dressed in a black hat. And I've spoken with some men that think that the style of dress that men are obligated to wear in that society some would argue is higher. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. And also the concept of the wig, what's the wig called again? I'm so sorry.
So sheitel.
A sheitel, right?
Yeah, and then there's also like a mitpachat, which is just like a scarf covering. Yeah, yeah. So it's also
Okay.
that's another thing. Also, like I just want to mention is like because my family isn't as religious as my friend's family, I feel sometimes kind of like not judged by them, but it's hard when they come over to my house and they're like, it just feels like my mom doesn't cover her hair, for example. Like it's just interesting because I feel like sometimes my teachers from my old high school like maybe like judged me or something, but I don't think that was the case. But sometimes I have this like inner doubt in me. I'm like, ugh, like this is so weird. Like, why is my family not more religious? And then I'm like, no, it's not for me to judge them. It's for them to be on their own journey. And that's also been a huge struggle for me when I first started, being more kosher and doing all these things in Shabbat. I would really judge my family, and I was not happy about that. And I'm going to be honest, I think that with every Baal Teshuvah, that it comes with, kind of with your surroundings, like not forcing everyone to do the same thing as you, but kind of being like, wait, I'm doing this. Why don't you do it also? Like it's not easy for me because my family does accommodate and they do things for me, but it, I can't be like, oh, you can't eat this. Like, and I used to do that because we live in the same house, and we share everything. And it's really not easy because I'm like, you can't eat that. That's not kosher. You can't do this on Shabbat, whatever. But so many good things have stemmed from this. Now my mom and both my sisters keep Shabbat, and it's just beautiful. And, even just our whole family itself, like, has grown so much from this. So, it definitely positive things can come from difficult situation. So that's your sign, people. If you're in a difficult situation, you can choose to look at it in a positive light, and there's always light at the end of the tunnel. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Moriel, thank you for sharing that. It's really, really beautiful through and through. And I want to thank you for being on the show and kind of giving some insight to that. All points that are very relatable. should someone on the podcast want to get in contact with you, ask you questions about how they can start their journey with modesty, start appreciating their body and their self in a different way, in a new light, what is the best way for them to reach out?
Of course, they can go on my Instagram and DM me. Also, email is great, guidancetotherunway@gmail.com. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me. I'm here for all of you guys. And yeah, always here to support you.
Amazing. Moriel, thank you for being on the podcast. And to the listeners, I already brought it up earlier in this episode, but please do follow us on Instagram and TikTok, Bad Jew Pod. Also, be sure to go to the website, badjewpod.co. That's how you can directly support the show by buying some merchandise. We got Mazel Tov tank tops. We got Hebrew coffee. We got the Schmooze Cruise tumblers. We've got all kinds of really cool merch that we love. And people always send us great photos of them repping the clothes. They love to wear this stuff to the gym. They love to wake up in the morning with their coffee and their wines, just having a good time and a good life. So please do support that. Support my content by buying some merch on badjew.co. Also, please be sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and please leave a comment and subscribe on YouTube. Thanks so much. We'll see you
Thank
next
you
week.
so much.
Shalom.